I would lie constantly. It would be about anything and everything. There wasn't a specific reason why I would always lie. It just would be almost a habit. Narcissists get to the place where they have this habit, and that's what I had. I had a habit over a long period of time of just showing up as a liar, and it was what I did consistently over and over and over again. Now, some people ask, like, when did you start lying? How do you know that this is like a part of you, that this has always been part of you? And it started early on. Early on in childhood, realizing that if I told the truth, then either I would get in trouble or I would be held accountable for something that I didn't want to be held accountable for. There was this piece of conformity growing up in a lot of Christianity and religious culture that said, hey, you need to look and act and be this way because of who you are and because of who you serve. And as a result, I started to realize that if I didn't want to do that, or if I wanted to do something that I wanted to do, or if I wanted to show up differently than what everybody else wanted me to show up, I would need to lie. So I started lying consistently over and over and over again. But it didn't start out being just blatant lies, because I did something that was a little bit different, and that was I always got caught. Now, for the longest time, my parents thought that I was a bad liar simply because I kept getting caught inside of lies. I would have this like sheepish look on my face where I'd be like, like there'd be something that would let them know that I was showing up as a liar. And I used this to my advantage. Use this to my advantage where I was able to manipulate different people, having them think and believe that I was a bad liar, when in reality I was a really good liar. I was only planning and purposing getting caught on the things that were the small lies, the things that weren't the big deal, the small things that I would get in trouble for, but the big things I would just lie straight to someone's face. Narcissists lie constantly. Have you seen this? You're going to see this inside your relationship where he's lying to you about literally everything. I had one client that they were working on something for the longest period of time, and part of it was this piece of triangulation. She had constantly gotten triangulated between him and between his previous ex, his previous engaged person that he was with before he was with her. And this was a constant thing throughout the entire relationship, always feeling put down, always feeling never good enough, always feeling less than, because you'd always compare her back to this other person. Then finally got to the place where she met some of his other family. She met some of his family and got involved and connected with his sister. And as a result, when she got connected with his sister, she finally found out he was never even engaged before. The person that he was using to triangulate her never even existed in his life. The person was real, but her involvement and their relationship wasn't real at all. But he had been lying the entire time to be able to control the current relationship. You're going to see narcissists lie about anything and everything. And sometimes the biggest question is, why? Why do they keep lying? Why does it make sense to even have all these lies that keep happening inside their life? Why do they keep doing it? And if we boil it down to an initial piece of what the narcissist is running away from, that is the piece of shame and guilt. Shame is the underlying avoidance that all narcissists are trying to run from, and they'll do anything and everything to be able to avoid it. Now, then it brings the logical question of like, well, if they're always running from shame, why don't they stop doing the things that's shameful, and then they don't have to worry about it anymore? And that would make sense, but unfortunately with a narcissist, they're not thinking that far ahead. They're simply thinking in the exact moment, how do I avoid the shame that is currently here? How do I avoid the accountability that I'm currently facing? How do I avoid what's happening right here, right now? And the easiest way, 9 times out of 10, is simply just to lie. To avoid it completely, to run away from it, to hide from it, to make you believe a different reality, to gaslight you into thinking that that didn't actually happen. Easiest way most of the times is just to lie. And so that's what he reverts to. Over and over and over again, he just continues to lie to you, trying to get away from the situation, trying to disavow any acknowledgement of what just happened, anything that he just did. He's going to continue the facade, even if he's faced with the facts. How many of you have seen this? You've shown him pictures. You've shown him text messages. You've said, hey, this blatantly shows that you cheated, that you had an affair, that you were emotionally involved with another person. And he's like, what are you talking about? That's not true. That's not me. And he'll blatantly avoid and ignore evidence put right in front of his face. Why? Goes back to still the shame avoidance. Because if he admits that that's actually true, then he has to admit that he's actually wrong. Whoa, Well, yeah, that's the wild part. Is majority of narcissists are not willing to be wrong because of the shame and the guilt that comes from that incongruency of who they say they are versus who they actually are. There's this battle between his mask and his reality. His reality being the person that's inside, that's filled with shame, that's running away from shame, that's running away from all this types of any guilt and frustrations and shame that comes about, versus the mask of, I've got it all together. I'm the perfect person. I'm amazing. Everybody bow down and worship me. Very polar extremes, but this is what's happening inside of a narcissist. This running away from and this fabricating of a mask. And the fabrication of the mask only leads to more and more lies, only leads to more and more manipulation, trying to hide who the person is underneath. So there's a version of me underneath that I wanted to hide and I wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid the reality that I was a cheater. I wanted to avoid the reality that I was unfaithful to my wife and that I was with other women and that I was going back and forth communicating with other people. I wanted to avoid that reality. So I blocked it up. I locked it up inside of my mind and I put it to the side and was like, that doesn't exist. Therefore, if I'm confronted by it, I can actually tell people, no, that's not true, because it's not true if that is locked up. That's the mindset. This is why a lot of narcissists compartmentalize, because if they compartmentalize, then they don't have to acknowledge that it's there, and then they can go off of just their current information, which is no, not cheating at all, because that doesn't exist in my current ecosphere, because what is actually true is locked up. You're going to see this so many times that he will lock up certain things in his mind so that he doesn't have to acknowledge it or be accountable for what's actually going on. So as a result, it continues to lie. So narcissists are lying oftentimes to avoid the shame and the guilt, the internal pieces. They're also lying to avoid accountability in the moment. Now, a lie oftentimes with a narcissist is not thinking down the road, is not thinking, how's this going to affect me tomorrow or next week or in a year? That's completely off the radar. Those narcissists can't even think a year to 5 years down the road because they're only looking at what in the exact moment needs to shift, change, so they can avoid this piece of accountability. So avoidance of accountability is another piece that's high on the scale of why a narcissist is actually going to lie. Why he's going to tell you something that's not true just to be able to avoid what's actually going on, to be able to run away from it. This piece of running away from the accountability is running away from exposure, which leads back to vulnerability, which leads back to shame and guilt. They all connect. They all connect so much, it's difficult for him to be able to see the difference at times. Vulnerability for a narcissist feels like weakness. It feels like death. It feels like this piece of like, I don't want to go there because of what it's going to expose inside of me, how it's going to make me feel. So there's times where I struggled to be able to deal with my wife's emotions, not because her emotions were too much, but because I didn't want to deal with that. Because that meant I would have to get vulnerable. I would have to get real about what's actually going on inside. And that was not something I wanted to do because it would have to hold me accountable. This is why a lot of narcissists have levels of empathy. But the difference is they're unwilling to engage with it. They're unwilling to acknowledge your feelings and needs. Simply because if they did, they would also have to acknowledge on the flip side that if they're acknowledging your feelings, needs, emotions in the moment, then they also have to acknowledge their inability and their lack of fulfilling them. Their inability to actually connect with you because they're a liar. And this piece is going to continue having him lie to you over and over and over again. This is why a narcissist in your life won't change, because he's not willing to be honest. And he's going to continue to tell lies over and over and over again. Now you might be thinking, why does he keep lying about the small stuff? It doesn't even make sense. Well, it's simply just a habit at this point. It's a habit because he's had so many years of consistently lying to you and to other people, it just rolls off the tongue. So you ask him what he had for lunch, something that you wouldn't even think a person would lie about, and it just comes out a lie. Why? Because he's so used to it. Because in that moment, he doesn't want to be accountable for something. In that moment, it might activate shame and guilt. In that moment, it might just simply be a habit at that point, where it's just an immediate reaction and a response. Narcissists will get to the place where their knee-jerk reaction is to lie, is to just tell the truth, just slightly different, deviate from it just a slight bit to be able to avoid any aspect of uncomfortability. He's looking for comfort. He's looking for ease. He's looking for something of saying, hey, this is okay for me to step into here because then I don't have to feel bad about myself, about issues that I've done, about different things, about accountability. I don't have to be bad about anything. I can just be comfortable. And as a result, he refuses to tell the truth. You're going to see this pattern inside your relationship, inside working with a narcissist all the time, where he's going to keep showing up as a liar. This is going to lead you to a place of confusion, frustration, and lots of concern, wondering what is even true, what is even real. If you're struggling with that today and you're wondering, how do I actually get free of this mindset piece that has me so confused because he's showing up as a liar 24/7, I want you to reach out for help. Go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough. I've got a video there that I've got prepared for you to show you how we actually help liberate you from being trapped inside a toxic relationship to actually finding freedom. You actually unlocking who you're called to be. Because I believe you're more than just being called to be on this earth to be used and abused, but to eternally grow and expand who you are and to not let someone here limit that. If you want help with that today, go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough today.